Okay, hi everyone, Mr. Edwards here. Thanks for once again joining me for this very important lesson. As today we're going to continue with the next section of our ongoing media literacy and digital citizenship unit. Throughout this entire unit, we are learning to understand our roles as responsible citizens in an ever-changing digital community and to critically think about some of the media messages and content that we see and create online. Today's lesson is entitled The Consequences of Online Hate Speech. All materials that we're going to be using are courtesy of Common Sense Media, so I'll credit to them. This brief video presentation that I'm making here is just part one of the lesson. This video file, along with the interactive notes, will be posted so that you can access them independently if you so desire. Part two of the lesson, the assignment, will also be posted and can be completed independently or with groups of up to 3 of your peers. Be sure to, when you're completing the assignment, if there are links to external videos or text to read, that you access them and digest them, because they are critical in developing a holistic understanding of the topic. And so without further delay, let's take a look at the lesson. The essential question that we're going to be working to answer in this lesson is, what should the consequences for online hate speech be? And unfortunately, I think it's something that is part of the online world. And what should we do? What should we do about it? The learning objectives for this lesson. First, we're going to reflect on whether or not we should consider hate speech free speech. Loaded question. We're going to identify the reasons for and against regulating hate speech, limiting it. We're going to use the handout for the assignment, the Take a Stand thinking routine, to consider the potential consequences on many different levels of online hate speech. So you may be familiar with this term I keep using, hate speech, hate speech. What do you think that it means? Yeah. If I didn't have the definition up on the screen here, I think that you probably would have come up with something similar on your own, right? Using any form of communication, anything, graffiti, sending a text message, anything. Using it as an attack on a person or people because of a group that they may belong to, whether it be race, gender, religion, ability, sexual orientation, etc. all fall under that category of hate speech. Many countries around the world, including ours, protect people's freedom of speech. And that also means protecting hate speech on some level. Freedom of speech is the right to state your own opinions and ideas without being stopped or punished. Recently, however, because of some well-publicized stories about online hate speech, there's a debate raging on whether or not we should extend the freedom of speech to include protections for hate speech. And so this debate rages anew, and so we want to be informed and have well-reasoned positions supported by evidence. And so what we're going to do as part of this lesson is you're going to listen to a part of a radio show regarding online hate speech. As you listen, you should think about the arguments that you're hearing both for and against regulating hate speech. Okay? So let me play that now. 4-minute listen.
In this month's All Tech Considered, we're looking at toxic content online, what it is, and what's to be done about it. It's become part of the routine after a horrific event like a mass shooting. The suspect's social media posts are often examined and often found to be filled with hate speech. The Supreme Court has ruled that hate speech generally is protected under the Constitution. The question is, when does online hate speech become a real threat? NPR's Jasmine Garst reports.
For Rochelle Ritchie, a political commentator who is frequently on television, it was obvious. The man who tweeted at her, quote, "kiss your loved ones when you leave home," following a TV appearance, was threatening her. But when she reported him to Twitter, Twitter sent her a reply saying it concluded that this was not an abusive tweet. Ritchie was frustrated.
What is offensive behavior? Do I have to be walking out of my condo building and end up being physically hurt or harmed in order for it to be taken seriously?
Just a few weeks later, the man who threatened Ritchie is accused of sending over a dozen explosive devices nationwide. Turns out he threatened other people on Twitter too. But online behavior isn't always this easy to define. Take the recent shooting spree at a synagogue in Pittsburgh. The alleged shooter had a history of anti-Semitic ranting on the social media site Gab. It was hateful, but...
I don't know. Do you see a direct threat in there? Because I don't.
That's Andrew Torba, the CEO and founder of Gab. He spoke to NPR the day after the shooting.
Censorship and pushing these people into the shadows is never going to be the answer. Guns do not kill people. Social media platforms do not kill people. People kill people.
Torba isn't the only one who thinks this. Jonathan Rausch, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, says,
"My view is that minorities are better off in a society that protects hate speech than in a society that protects minorities from hate speech."
Rausch, who is Jewish and has been active in the gay rights movement for decades, believes confronting hate speech has been key to the advancement of civil rights in America.
Trying to deal with hate by repressing hate speech is like trying to deal with global warming by breaking the thermometers. The problem isn't the speech, the problem is the hate. And the way you deal with that problem is by understanding and confronting it.
Heidi Beirach is the director of the Southern Poverty Law Center's Intelligence Project. Their position is hate speech can and often does lead to violence.
We know people are radicalized by interacting with others to learn how to hate Black people or Jews or so on.
Beirach points to one egregious case, Myanmar, a country where the military recently published posts on Facebook spreading hateful misinformation about the Rohingya Muslim minority. The United Nations has said those posts contributed to the mass murder, rape, and forced exodus of the Rohingya. And Facebook acknowledges it was too slow in removing anti-Muslim hate speech in Myanmar, but it's been cautious about censoring hate speech in America. Just a few months ago, it got into hot water for allowing Holocaust deniers.
The Law Center has called on these tech companies to rid their platforms of this material. We're just going to get more violence as this stuff proliferates.
But the Southern Poverty Law Center itself has come into controversy over who it labels a hate group. And then there's the question of pushing hate groups further underground, where they might be hard to monitor.
Even if the extremists leave these big platforms and end up somewhere else, the reach of their propaganda has now been reduced. I would rather have extremists preaching to the choir than preaching to the masses and converting more people to their ideas.
Facebook is at least taking an additional step in that direction. It recently announced that it's creating a new independent board to monitor content complaints. Free speech experts say, here's the thing. The First Amendment prevents government censorship. Private social media companies like Facebook and Twitter, they can do whatever they want. The question remains, are we better off if they do? Jasmine Garst, NPR News, New York.
So certainly some tough questions raised.
And now, more from NPR.
No more, thank you. Okay.
Live.
Okay, sorry about that. Certainly some tough questions raised in that NPR broadcast. There is no simple solution here in terms of being able to arrive at a consensus. Okay, and so now I want you to take a second and reflect on what you just heard. What are some reasons that people give for regulating. That's using the power of the government to pass laws that limit something. What are some arguments for regulating it, and what are some arguments against regulating it? So you can add this to the handout that I have posted on, do it in your notebook, whatever. I do want to see this, that you are taking the time to create this table. So you can pause the video now and brainstorm some reasons for both. Okay, some of the reasons that I came up with, reasons for regulating it. Well, first of all, because it can feel threatening and offensive to others. Maybe if it not to you, maybe you don't personally feel aggrieved, but that could have that impact on others. It can lead to violence when people are able to interact with others that have the same viewpoint, and they become radicalized with these hateful ideas. We see that time and time again. Regulating hate speech also reduces the reach that some of these hate groups have. Some of the reasons I came up with for why people are against regulating online hate speech, because number one, it's not always easy to define, like what is a direct threat. Pushing people with hateful opinions like into the shadows doesn't really solve a problem, right? Lets it fester. And some would argue that regulating actually violates our First Amendment right to free speech. Another good one would be that people don't even agree on what qualifies as hate speech. Okay. There's no single right or wrong way to address online hate speech. And private organizations like social media apps, even private colleges, they have to create their own rules for deciding how to respond to online hate speech and what the potential consequences for users may be. So what I would like you to do is, with the people around you or independently, pause the video here, respond to these prompts. Really, it's important to hear what others have to say, okay? Do they think that should be limited, that it should be regulated, that it should not be regulated? So put this in your class notebook as well, maybe off in the margin where I can find it easily. And access the dilemmas that are posted on the assignment for this lesson, and thus concludes this lesson.